Fox and the Fox Sports app. Time now to go viral. Celtics 7'6", rookie center Taco Fall has only appeared in 3 games so far this season for Boston. But that hasn't stopped basketball fans from trying to vote Taco into the All-Star game. He's currently in 6th place in fan voting amongst front court players in the East. I actually support this. The prompter right there says this is insanity. I support this. I like Taco Fall. I also think he would be a great 14th man in an All-Star game. It'd be fun. You guys look at me like I'm crazy.
What is he going to do when they're running up and down the floor, throwing oops, throwing lobs? Is he going to be able to function in an All-Star game?
Yeah, he'd be able to function. I don't know if he'd function at a high level.
Contesting at the rim.
It'll be great for highlights.
Right.
It'd be awesome for highlights.
It's Canty. You absolutely read my mind.
100%.
Who doesn't in the NBA want to posterize the tallest player in the league?
It's true.
Listen, Taco one day might be a good player, but right now he's more of a prop. Yep. And so if he gets voted in, let him be in, and then put him in. You don't even have to go on the offensive end. Stand beneath the rim on the defensive end and let guys take turns trying to yam him. Time now. Stories to start your morning. The Cowboys will be reportedly finally moving on from Jason Garrett. He was he was head coach for 9 seasons from the Cowboys. The move comes 5 days after the Cowboys missed the playoffs and after Garrett met with the team multiple times. Chris Canty, why'd this drag out so long?
Because I think Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones are trying to convince Jason Garrett to stay within the organization. Obviously, Jason Garrett probably knows by now he's not going to be the head coach of the Cowboys in 2020, and he wants to see what opportunities might be elsewhere, not only this offseason, but a year from now as well. So he's just trying to put out all his feelers and try to get as much information as he can so he can make an informed decision. But I think it's ultimately about Stephen and Jerry trying to sell him to stay with the boys in another role.
Jerry Jones respects Jason Garrett. He's been with the organization for over 20 years. He's just giving him some opportunity to say his goodbyes, but also pick his brain about what's going on with the football team, who would be the best coach for the next season.
On to teams that actually made the playoffs, which kick off Saturday. Tom Brady's excited and ready for the challenge of facing the Titans, saying, quote, "It's playoff football. Everyone knows what's at stake." Brian, what are you expecting this matchup tomorrow night?
I'm expecting experience to win a football game. Even though Tom Brady and the Patriots don't have a bunch of explosive plays on offense, I think going into Gillette with that type of experience that the Patriots have will certainly rule the day. Can they stop the run game? That's the biggest question.
I think it's going to be a knockdown, drag-them-out game. Both teams are going to want to run the football. I think that has to be the emphasis. It's going to be on the front sevens and the offensive lines. Who can win out against the other team? And I think that you have to give the edge to the Tennessee Titans in that kind of fight.
Well, I think they have the physicality edge, but if the Patriots play a clean game, if Brady avoids the critical mistake like he had against Miami, I do not see, even as well as the Titans have been playing, I do not see them going to Gillette and beating the New England Patriots this weekend. On to the other AFC battle. Josh Allen and the Bills will face off against Deshaun Watson and the Texans. The Bills haven't won a playoff game since 1995. Canty, do you think Buffalo will finally end their drought?
No, because when you get to playoff football, you have to not only look at the matchup between head coaches, but the matchups between quarterbacks, and clearly Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Josh Allen. I think Deshaun Watson's playmaking ability is why I would give the Texans the edge. And then, of course, the Texans are going to get a little bit of an emotional boost on the defensive side of the ball because J.J. Watt is coming back. So I like the Texans in this one, despite their head coach.
Yeah, the Texans certainly need J.J. Watt because I think the Bills want to run the football against this 25th-ranked run defense of the Texans. If they can get Singletary and Gore going just a little bit, they throw in some runs with Josh Allen, that can present some problems for the Texans.
Here's the deal. Since Bill O'Brien's been the head coach of the Texans, they've been in the playoffs 4 times. The only quarterback they have beaten in the playoffs is the Raiders' 3rd stringer, Connor Cook, after 2 quarterback injuries. They got blown out 30-0 in one home playoff game. They got blown out last year to the Colts in a playoff game. They're yet to beat a real starting NFL quarterback in the playoffs under Bill O'Brien. It is the toughest game of the weekend to pick, but I actually like the Buffalo Bills to go into Houston and pull off the upset. On to the NFC, Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern on Fox. The Vikings face the Saints. Last time these two played in the playoffs, New Orleans lost in an absolute heartbreaker in what we, of course, know as the Minneapolis Miracle. Drew Brees says his team is using those past playoff shortcomings as fuel. Brian Westbrook, is there any way the Saints lose this game?
in order for the Saints to lose, this is what has to happen for the Minnesota Vikings. You have to be able to control the clock. That means the running game, Dalvin Cook, has to be healthy enough to get things going. That's going to allow you to keep the ball away from Drew Brees, and then that's going to open up Thielen and Diggs down the field, and so that Kirk Cousins doesn't have to be the hero. He's throwing to wide open receivers like you saw there. If they can do that, they have a chance, a small chance, but a chance.
That's a big if. I mean, going down to the Super Bowl and that's Superdome, that's a tough environment to play in, and so that's putting a lot of confidence in Kirk Cousins that he's going to be able to operate that offense at a high enough level to keep pace with Drew Brees and that high-powered Saints offense. I just don't think in a game where you're going to have to match points with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time that Minnesota Vikings offense is going to be able to do that.
And that Minnesota Vikings secondary is not what it once was. Xavier Rhodes has been a part-time player ever since that sideline dust-up with Mike Zimmer. And Kirk Cousins, in the first quarter of the season and last quarter of the season was bad. The middle 2 quarters of the season was excellent. You need that version of Kirk Cousins and probably last year's Vikings defense in order to pull off the upset. I also don't see it happening. On to the Seahawks and Eagles. Russell Wilson going to be in Philly to face Carson Wentz. This will be Wentz's first career playoff start. It's going to be a tough one with all the injuries his team has on offense. Chris Canty, who wins this game on Sunday?
I'm rolling with the upset. I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know that they're a home dog. I think it's time to break out those underdog masks. But the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the things that I like about this team is that they're strong on both lines. Now, they took a blow because Brandon Brooks is not going to play in this game. On Sunday, they lost him last week in their regular season finale against the New York Giants. But they still have that defensive line intact with Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, and company. And I think that they can put some pressure on Russell Wilson if that Seahawks offense isn't able to establish that run game. I know that they signed Marshawn Lynch last week, but that was out of desperation because they lost C.J. Prosise, they lost Rashad Penny, and they lost Chris Carson. So you're talking about their 3 best options at the running back position within the last 5 weeks of the season. So this is a desperate Seahawks team in terms of being able to try to find production in the run game. If they get forced to be in a drop-back game and try to put it on Russell Wilson's arm, I just don't think they're going to have a lot of success doing it that way. Since week 10, the Seahawks are giving up sacks on 10% of their dropbacks. That, by far, is the highest rate in the National Football League. No other team is doing that. So you have to be a little bit concerned if the Seahawks are forced to be a volume passing team in this game, that this is probably going to be a one-sided affair.
Yeah, the Seahawks certainly have to protect their quarterback better. But it's just funny how we all have said at parts during this season that Russell Wilson is an MVP. He's the best quarterback that we've seen all year. And now we're saying because they don't have the running backs, we have to worry about putting everything on the shoulders of Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is just that good. I think Metcalf can be an explosive player down the field. I think Lockett can do the same thing. The one big thing that the Philadelphia Eagles defense has struggled at is covering receivers deep down the field. And Russell Wilson throws one of the best deep balls in the NFL. And so because of that, I think that they could take advantage of the Eagles defense on Sunday. But here's the other part. Philadelphia Eagles are missing Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. We don't know what's going to happen with Zach Ertz and his ribs. Obviously, Brandon Brooks. So their frontline guys, as far as their ability to run the football, it's been compromised. Their ability to make plays down the field has been compromised. The only way that they've been able to be successful is Carson Wentz taking a bunch of guys that were on the practice squad or just weren't playing at all and making those guys special. And really, and Coach Mangini talks about it all the time, being an elevator, being a force multiplier. Carson Wentz has been that force multiplier. You have to wonder, does that happen in the playoffs? I think with tougher teams that you're going to be facing, it's going to be harder for their offense to score points.
So here's the other element to it. Philadelphia was 5-7. And then what happened? They won 4 straight. But how did they win those 4 straight? They had 4 straight games against a historically bad division, the NFC East. They went Giants, Washington, Dallas, back to the Giants on that 4-game winning streak. I refuse to be duped by the last month of the season where they were playing only divisional opponents. They had a losing record outside of the division. All year long, we talked about how this very talented team had been underachieving and then ravaged by injuries. Seattle, on the other hand, I actually think last year in the playoffs, had they suffered a spate of running back injuries like they have this year, they'd have beaten the Cowboys. Because last year in the playoffs, what cost them that game was their dedication to running the ball. They ran the ball 24 times for 73 yards in that playoff game, which is bad. It's even worse when you consider 13 of those yards were by Russell Wilson, and 28 of them were the one time Rashad Penny got loose. That means on their other 19 carries, they got 42 total yards. Meanwhile, when Russell dropped back, which he should have done way more often, but that Brian Schottenheimer offense, they wouldn't let him, and it was incredibly frustrating to watch, they were very successful. I think they are forced into letting Russell Wilson drop back more, and I actually think that's good for them. I think sometimes they believe they are a run-first, defense-oriented team. The defense in Seattle is not that good.
No.
Since 2009, 132 teams have made the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks have the 129th sack rate of those 132 teams. That's from Bill Barnwell's great preview article that went up last night. I think this is a Russell Wilson game, and I think Russell Wilson is one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football. I think he can have another signature moment. With that said, Canty, I think it's a very close game. Seattle does not know how to blow people out. They don't even try, seemingly, to blow people out. They have 11 wins this year. 10 of them have come by 8 points or fewer. They've been in one-score games all year long. So I like Seattle. I like Seattle in a very close one. And because it'll be a close game, Carson Wentz will, I think, have an opportunity for the signature moment that he has yet to have in his career because he hasn't played in the playoffs. I just don't know if Philly has the horses for it, despite them being on a 4-game winning streak.
No, listen, I get you guys' logic in a close ball game. You trust Russell Wilson a lot more than you trust Carson Wentz, but this ain't fantasy football. In order to be able to take advantage of the deficiency of the Eagles' defense, the back end, you got to be able to have time, and that offensive line for the Seahawks has got to be able to hold up in protection. I talked to you about the sack rate since Week 10 from that Seahawks offensive line. But if you look at Russell Wilson's passer rating since that point in the season, there's a reason why his production has fallen off since the first half of the year.
That's where his MVP.
Exactly. The first half of the year, in the first 9 games, he had a passer rating north of 100 in 8 of those ball games. But since then, he's only had a passer rating north of 100 in 1 of them.
Yep.
So Russell